Welcome to Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where real leaders share the raw truth about the lessons they learned the hard way so you don't have to. Join our host, Layci Nelson, founder of Transcend Leadership Collective and former terrible leader. Every leader can become worthy of being followed if they are willing to put in the work. On this podcast, we share the messy stories and behind-the-scenes reality of what the work actually entails. We welcome you to this community of revolutionary leaders who believe honest communication, healthy conflict, and building cultures of acceptance, respect, and trust are not only possible, but non-negotiable for cultivating world-class teams.
Hello, and welcome back to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. We have a fun guest with us here today. If you don't follow him on Instagram, you should after this conversation. His content is definitely entertaining and educational. And Nate Skop, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. It's good to see you again. I haven't seen you since the last time you visited Wisconsin, so.
I know, it's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
You do comment on my ridiculous workouts I post now and then, and I appreciate it. So
I don't know how you do it.
I think you do.
Know. Anytime anyone says anything about burpees, I'm like, all right, there's a door, I'm leaving. So I'm out.
They're not my favorite, but I will do them when they're prescribed. So
That's
Nate,
fair.
if you haven't figured out, Nate is a personal trainer, but he is more than personal training in the traditional way we might think about it. He owns Fuel. He's the owner and the founder of Fuel Inspired, which is correct me if I get any of this wrong, Nate, please, but he works with people online primarily. The bulk of his clientele is online, but he also does some contract work with gyms, teaching some strength courses, and also some one-to-one, what we think of as more traditional personal training. But a lot of his clientele, the bulk of them, are online clientele who you are coaching through strength and conditioning training and nutrition coaching, correct?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I actually forgot to mention one thing. I just started doing this. It's actually kind of cool. I do a lot of stuff with corporations too, like corporate wellness things. So that's something I'm trying to branch out to a little bit as well. So, trying to have wear as many hats as possible without going insane for the most part.
Right. And in the entrepreneurial world, I find we usually put on way too many and then realize a little bit too late that we need to back it off a bit.
That's fair. I'm with you on that.
So you tell us a little bit about when you founded Fuel Inspired. Like, how long have you been doing what you're doing?
Well, I've been in I'd say myself personally, I've been lifting weights and doing like strength and conditioning probably for 20 years, maybe a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been kind of part-time training people, and then really got serious. I'd say part-time training people like when I was like 26 or 27, and then got really serious and got a bunch of different certifications from National Academy of Sports Medicine with nutrition, sports performance, golf fitness, corrective exercise specialist. I'm actually trying to go for their master certification. It's on the radar in the next year or so, which is kind of cool. I never thought it'd be something I would do. But yeah, there's a ton of different certifications through them. And I started doing that when I was about, I think it was either 33 or 35, after working in like whatever job I could pick up that I could make ends meet for the most part, whether or not it was sales, outside sales, purchasing, no like run of the mill, like, I'm just trying to make ends like survive type of thing, but I couldn't find my place for the most part. And I always had a hard time with like committing to working in the field that I really loved. You know what I mean? So like, I didn't want to like work out and then get burnt out by training people all the time. I was worried about that I'd lose some like passion in like my own health by jumping in and trying to train other people, which is kind of weird because I've actually been to quite a few gyms. And this is part of the reason why I thought that it's the first gym I ever worked at is like, I looked at a bunch of trainers and they just didn't really look or live the part. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to stick with what I'm doing and use the gym as my time. So, but yeah, I'd say about in general in health and fitness and strength training for about 20 years, doing my own thing for about 2, and then working for gyms, probably about 7 to 10.
Okay. So you started Fuel Inspired in 2020. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's kind of when the idea hatched in 2020, which, we all remember that year for
Oh,
many different reasons. So yeah, that's when I discovered how great a rowing machine was, and it was kind of not by choice. So yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
but yeah,
Then I went from working out in a gym to working out at home primarily, and that is what I still do. So,
yeah, I
yeah,
commend you for that. Honestly, I would have a really hard time knocking out like full sessions at home. Like rowing and kettlebell stuff was as much as I could do, and it was just like I need to get back in the gym. So it's good for my
yeah.
brain.
I do miss the social aspect of it for sure, but
Oh, for
I'm in
sure.
a workout community that helps me with that. So,
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I want to know, uh, you said I want to hit on something that you kind of just glossed over. You said you were afraid to dive in with both feet because you essentially didn't want fitness to kind of lose its magic for you and to lose the the ability to be your place where you could just shut off, dig in. It was a place of respite. Just almost, this might sound a little cheesy, but I think if people are into fitness as well, listening to this, almost kind of like a sacred place where you could just
Yeah.
breathe and get in your head or get out of your head, depending on what you needed that day. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
and what motivated you to go? I think I want to try. What switched?
Well, I'll start. We'll kind of do like a little Quentin Tarantino and start at the back and go to the front.
Okay, I'm
Um,
here for it.
so to this day, like recently, all my business is virtual for the most part. I'd say a huge part of it, and I'm always on my phone. So the first thing I do when I go to the gym is I go do not disturb, and I still treat the gym like my time. As like like you said, like a sacred place and a place that I find that can better me physically and mentally, and like create something. Because every
Yeah.
single day when you go to the gym, you can do something you didn't do before. No matter where you go or no matter where you're at in your fitness journey, you can.
Yep.
So I guess what kind of turned me off of doing that initially is when I first started working for a gym. I saw how the owners were and a lot of other trainers and things like that, and it just became like this thing where they were like they didn't have time to work out and they didn't care to, and they just started. It was very cynical.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why is that? Like, I don't want to become that. And the more I worked in the companies I worked for, the more things kind of opened up to me.
Mhm.
And it was people that cared about health and wellness. And kind of the luster was taken away from them because they couldn't control their own culture within their own clientele. So they
Mm.
kind of had to follow like standards of someone that potentially, I mean, I don't want to throw him in under the bus, but you probably should bring this guy his confession as a terrible leader on. But even though he hasn't changed his ways, we'll just keep it at that. So basically, you couldn't control your own culture. You would
Yeah.
go into a gym and you'd just be handed off clients that wouldn't necessarily suit your needs and things like that. I wouldn't say needs, but like your like education and your specialty.
Bad fit.
And I saw that when I was working at gyms or working out, just consistently, where like trainers just looked like they were run down. And when I used to work in sales, I would leave work and I would go right to the gym and I'd feel great when I left. And I'd see these trainers that were just like at these gyms, just not doing anything, not excited to help people. I'm like, I don't want that.
Right.
Um, so one day I was working in purchasing and I went to a gym. One of my buddies like invited me to come work out with him. I walked into this gym, like, it's a pretty nice gym. I like the facility. Like, what do I got to do? Like, what do I have to do to become a personal trainer? I'm like, I really want to get out of purchasing. I want to do something I actually enjoy. And he goes, dude, that sounds awesome. You'd be a great personal trainer. I'm like, okay, well, help me. So
Mhm.
started taking some tests and things like that. And, got my certification for a CPT, built up a huge clientele really fast because I work. Like when I have something in mind, like I build it. And next thing you know, I'm like walking away from purchasing and I'm like, I'm controlling my own clientele and I'm still working out and I'm still enjoying it. And the things that have kind of kept me from feeling stale in it was the things that I think that other trainers weren't held accountable to do. Um, and that was to constantly either vary their approach with clients, develop a very like broad spectrum of what they can do, and then continue to learn. I will say this from a perspective of someone that has worked in facilities for probably close to a decade. It is crazy when you look on a gym's website and they list all these trainers and they list all their certifications and things like that. But I would challenge anyone that goes to a gym that signs up with a trainer because of their certifications and because of their education to ask them when the last time they renewed their certification or had CEUs that they actually applied towards what they're doing. So that's
Right.
what kept me like motivated, was learning more and becoming like more like versatile and being able to train anyone, and thinking that I could walk in any gym in America and be successful and just have that confident mindset. So I always have this, like with myself, with fitness, with like the actual physical aspect, that I have this like fire that I have to constantly try to improve or do something.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's go for a walk that day, or, go for a run, or lift heavy weights, or do yoga. Like I always have to do something because I feel like that just is good for my brain. And by adding education and things like that, it kept everything really fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the pandemic, that was when I really was like, I could do this and I can control my culture and
Yeah.
really make sure that every person feels valued. So it started with everything shutting down, and then me reaching out to people and saying, hey, how would you like to do some virtual training and follow a program that I create when the days we don't train? And they're like, oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, I started building like programs through an app I use called True Coach. Just I have
Uh-huh.
probably have 300 programs that I've created,
I am
and I can apply that to, yeah, you've used True Coach, I'm sure. Yeah.
I am friends with the founder. So, well,
Oh, really?
I
That's
shouldn't
awesome.
say
Yeah.
I shouldn't say friends. I am business associates. Before when
Well,
they sold it, but before they built it up and sold it, I
yeah.
knew them. So yeah.
I've been using True Coach since actually when I used to work at Razor at the gym that I worked at. I actually would, with clients that are really committed, I would, on my own like dime, I'd make programs for them
Yeah.
and assign them to them, because I'm like, I want to make sure that you stay active. So you'd be at the gym at some time at night, and I'd be working with a client, and you'd see 4 or 5 of my other clients working out on their own, following
Yeah.
a program that I was working with,
Yeah.
and then no other trainers in the gym at all. And I'm like, okay, well, you just got to try to keep everyone moving, keep everyone committed.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, during the pandemic, I'm like, I can control my own culture. I can
Yep.
build like my own business
Yeah.
and keep everyone in line. And I had no issues in regards to like um, feeling motivated, because like this is my team. I'm leading them. So if I can't live the part and do what I ask them to do, then
Yeah.
I don't deserve to be in that field, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. You have a very high standard for yourself.
I do.
Of
And it's actually a good and a bad thing. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Most of us probably could say the same thing.
Yeah.
Learning how to use it for the power of good, including towards ourselves, is definitely
Yeah.
part of the journey of being an entrepreneur.
Very,
So
very true. Yeah.
you have a lot of influence. I mean, one of the things that I'm always impressed with about anyone who has an online business is the amount of work that it takes to get people to follow and want to listen to what you have to say.
Mhm.
You're an unknown quantity, right? It's just scroll, scroll, scroll. And then something about the way that you are connecting with people works for them, and
Yeah.
they get drawn in. So how do you figure out your strategy, or what goes on in your head when you're like thinking about building your culture virtually? What does
Mhm.
that what does that look like for you, that process?
So virtually is something I'm still figuring out. And because a lot of the virtual clients I have were referrals from people that were in person, and things like that.
Okay.
But that's something that like I think until my business, like until I move on from this, like I will always be learning about the virtual aspect of everything,
Oh yeah. It's always
for sure. Yep. So like I would say for me, um, I've always just tried to be myself,
mm-hmm.
and I don't change that. And that's one of the things that I will say, working for other companies, I try to like kind of fit in,
Mm,
versus like just really just be myself and lead.
yeah.
And um, one of the things I always try to do that I feel like really works is, if it's a local business, I try to partner with like someone that's really involved in the community and celebrates their client victories, because that's what keeps people coming back, is like your engagement with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then virtually, it's just honestly, it's just a grind. It's just being consistent, um, and it's putting something out there every couple days. It's posting something that's maybe shows some vulnerability, or an aspect of learning, or posting something that's like some kind of like something you're bragging about, so that your clients can be like, you know what, that guy knows what he's doing because he's doing it, type of thing.
Right.
Or
Right.
even reaching out to other guys that are like very big in the fitness industry and trying to build a relationship with guys that have 100,000 plus followers. And if they don't respond to the first message, just keep messaging them.
Yeah.
I used to do, and when I was in outside sales, I used to work in cold calling, and nothing will ever be worse than that. So if you reach out to a guy and you comment on his story to someone that's really good at building things and kind of keeping things moving, without like being too insincere, you just have to be really kind of just like humble and be like, hey, dude, I really like what you're doing. Thanks for being like a big part of the fitness industry and a part of the way like I see like what I want to have like in as far as vision of good.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the whole virtual thing is it's really weird. It's just consistent. It's trying to like understand trends, but not like sacrifice your moral code.
Yes.
But just being like super consistent with posting and like, just being involved with other communities and other influencers and things like that. So I will never consider myself an influencer. I don't care if I have 1 million followers. I don't care. Like if it ever gets to that point, I like literally will hire someone to do everything for me on social media, and I will like go live in a hole somewhere and be like, hide.
You have some strong feelings about that.
Social media is not. It's a necessary evil in the fitness industry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I think now it's almost any industry these days. Even like people just bring bugs at your house. Like they have to have an online presence in order to be even registered on people's radar screens. So.
Yeah.
Some of the posts that I love of yours, of course, I love your, it's fun to watch, your documentation of your mullet growing out. It's fun
getting
to
there,
watch.
yeah. 1 year. I haven't cut it for a year. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Fun to watch the documentation of your dogs. You have 3 rescue dogs.
I do.
Yeah. You've got, what kind of, all 3 are Boston Terriers, right?
Yep. One is he's 10-year-old little guy. His name's Buster. He was a rescue. Actually, I discovered him when I was in Seattle, or when I was in Washington visiting Mary, like when she lived out there, which is super weird. And I reached out to the rescue organization when I was out there, and they're like, oh yeah, he's not out here anymore. We shipped him back, or the rescue organization picked him up from the Midwest. I'm like, oh, we're in the Midwest, right? Gurnee, Illinois. I'm like, what? That's like 15 minutes from where I live. So I flew back home and I got off the plane from Seattle and went down to a McDonald's, met a lady, and bought him right off the plane. So anyway, so Buster's, he's my miracle baby. And then the other 2 are sisters, but like blood sisters, not litter mates.
Okay.
And I rescued one from one of my friends who lives out in Minnesota, who's a foster mom. After I had one puppy that passed, and she's like, she reached out to me. She goes, hey, if you see any of the dogs that I have, like, we'll talk to my organization about doing out of state adoption. I'm like, perfect, because she knows I'm a good dog dad, creepy dog dad, but a good one. So like she reaches out and she goes, hey, I found a little brown Boston Terrier. What do you think? I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted. So it was during the pandemic era. So like dog like stuff for the vets took forever to get anything squared away. So it took her like 6 months to get spayed and all this other stuff. So anyway, drive to Minnesota, pick her up, rescue her, bring her home. A year and a half later, my friend reaches out to me and says, you're not going to believe who we found. I'm like, what? And she goes, from the same location that Sylvie was at, we found like either her, like it's her blood. We don't know if it's like a litter mate or if it's her younger sister or if Sylvia was her mom, like something.
Yeah.
So she sent me a picture of her. I'm like, oh my God, it looks exactly like her.
Yeah.
So I can't have 3 dogs at my apartment. So I went anyway and bought her. Didn't care. I'm like, I'll figure this one out. They look exactly alike. So I just walked them separately and no one ever knew. But then I'm like, I'm going to do this right. So I actually made one of the dogs an emotional support animal because we all need dogs in our life. I believe that. And emotional support. And now they, no one can really say anything. I bring her with me anywhere she wants. So yeah, it was crazy. Like a year and a half, needle in a haystack later, they're like, hey, here's your sister. Do you want to adopt her too? I'm like, of course I do. So yeah, it's a pretty great picture. Yeah. I would say that's questionable. Like 2 days ago, they were fighting in the dog park, and I had to separate them. So,
oh my gosh.
And, so one, oh my God, you have no idea. They're wild too, like wild.
Those are bananas. Yeah.
Yeah. If I don't walk them 2 miles a day, it's like.
Yeah, I walk my Mastiff boxer mix 2 miles a day, and he's done for 3 days. He's like, peace out.
That's nice. I could walk these guys 2 miles a day 4 times, and they'd still be like, hey.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah. Like, it sounds like a good energy match for you. So
I would agree. Yeah, they're little type A and they need a lot of attention. So anyway, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's the kind of vulnerable, personal, fun stuff that you also, share that I think draws people in. And we all are learning this balance of finding this presence online that is authentically us. And yeah, the dance, I don't think any of us have it figured out, but we're all trying to figure it out in this entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Oh, what? I'm going to launch into the juicy stuff now. Thinking
right.
a little bit. I know, here we go. Thinking about you clearly are on a leadership trajectory, always identified, I think, as a leader, whether you maybe not identified, but always have had some of those internal characteristics that are common threads among leadership. The looking at something and going, "No, I don't like that. I'm not going to do that." So probably, I'm guessing you may have not been the easiest person to manage as a boss.
You're spot on with that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a common trait. Good mark of a future entrepreneur. So my question for you, in your trajectory over the last few years that's got you to where you are now.
Yeah.
What is one of the big missteps or mistakes that you look back on now and you're like, oh man, okay, I did this really dumb thing, but don't do this?
Yeah, I mean, so I thought about this a little bit, and there's a lot of like dumb ones that, guys that are age 20 to 25 do at work, and it's just dumb. Mm-hmm. We won't go into those though. One thing that always will stand out to me is when I first got into the leadership role, like no one really told me about how hard crucial conversations are. Mm-hmm. And I will say that for the first few years I was in leadership in a sales company that I worked at, it was challenging for me to have a conversation that was tough with an employee without becoming emotional about it. Mm-hmm. And not that that's a bad thing. I think it's good to have emotions and care, but sometimes, and this ties into kind of what I was mentioning earlier, you got to control your culture. And when you are trying to hold someone accountable for not necessarily a plan that you made, but for someone else, it's hard to separate what's actually important to you mm-hmm. and your moral code, or what are you doing with your job.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, the biggest thing was not laying out conversations that are important and crucial and kind of tough to have. Not laying them out in an outline format and taking emotion out of the scenario and just going through it and asking them if they have any questions, getting their feedback.
Yeah.
The other thing too is one of the things that I actually picked up on really quickly in the workplace was, as a male, you should not have a tough conversation with a female alone. Mm-hmm. Always have someone else in the room with you to make sure that you have this even aspect of I would say an even approach to a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I learned that pretty quickly. I used to bring in other managers with me, females, mm-hmm. to have a conversation with another female employee, just to make sure that the female employee knew that they were being heard. Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen right away. It was still this, you need to do this, and I don't care what your answer is, type of thing.
Right.
And it took me a little bit to kind of learn that. And again, trying to filter myself a little bit, but what do they say? You catch more bees with honey than poop. Is that the term? And I use poop and not the other word. So yeah.
You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I think that's it. Something
like that. So anyway, I learned to use more honey than vinegar after a while. So
yes.
But yeah, in general, it's and honestly, and this is going to sound crazy, I learned more from my retail sales job than I did when I was going to school for my business administration degree.
Oh my gosh.
Sales wasn't even close.
Man. And it's the real deal. When your sales pressures are high, the outcomes mm-hmm. are explicit, what's expected of you. And there's a certain culture to sales where you're dealing with a lot of big personalities and people with big emotions. And egos often also.
For sure, yeah.
Is what I've seen, perhaps, in some sales departments. And
just a couple, yeah.
But when harnessed, I mean, it can be amazing, right? It's just that you got to have the right leadership. So when you said it was hard for you, you would bring too much emotion into a hard conversation. Was the emotion like, were you dysregulated, like your central nervous system, you just were feeling super unsure, or was it stemming from the dissonance that you spoke to a little bit of having to enforce or talk about things that were not your edict coming down, but were coming down from above, the glory of middle management, that you maybe didn't even have any buy-in or part of forming? And then were they in contrast to your core values or your moral code? Were they misaligned?
I would say so. And the reason why I say this is because I was very different than a lot of the other people at that job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was very disciplined. I was very regimented with stuff I did outside of work. There's this culture with like the restaurants and retail where when you leave work, you're going to the bar.
Right.
And same with restaurants. When you get done with your shift at a restaurant, you go drink at the bar that you're working at. So like I always kind of marched my different path. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought I always, my dad taught me this, like to think a few steps ahead,
Yeah.
playing pool or playing hockey or whatever, like just try to think ahead of the competition. And, you don't ever want to be on your heels. So when things would come down from like the like leadership or management and things like that, like everyone else is just corporate. Like they just wanted to make money so they could go and buy cigarettes and drink and, do whatever they're looking to do. And like I wanted to live my life and I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to enjoy and feel good about what I did every single day when I left. And some of the things that, like I said, they just didn't align right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have a hard time with people approaching me and asking me to do something because then I would think about like how does it affect my job,
Mm-hmm.
like my happiness, how would it affect the company, and how
Right.
would it affect the client? And like if I couldn't answer that it's going to affect all three of those aspects of anything, I'm like I don't want to do this. And they're like, well, you have to. This is the company initiative. I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
So those were always fun conversations. But yeah, you're definitely right. 100%. It actually tied into some of these things where it's like the emotional aspect of like coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, thinking back on it, what I should have done has been or figured out how to challenge upward respectfully a little bit more and kind of find out maybe the
Yeah.
root of why they were going after something. But when
Yeah.
you're younger and you're just figuring it out, you
I don't
kind
know.
of just like
Yeah.
you're like no, no.
Yeah.
And if people don't want to follow it, you're like, I don't know why we're following. We're just following it. Just do it, type of thing. So,
Right.
which is not exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, that's one of
Yeah,
the number one things that we talk about. And I mean, I've been in similar situations in my early 20s, like not
yeah,
knowing what the hell I was doing as a leader and feeling like I'm just, they said we have to do it, so you have to do it. I think those of us probably all and been at that point, some point in our leadership trajectory of managing other people and learning how to upward manage so that grabbing that information or going to my boss and saying, I really am having a hard time understanding why we're doing this and buying in. I'm not
hmm
trying to make your life difficult. I'm trying to be able to be an authentic leader here. I didn't have all that language, but man, would it have served me well if I did. So,
yeah. I would agree 100%. It's
yeah.
one of those things that you figure it out eventually, and hopefully you actually figure it out and just don't keep like banging your head against the wall until like you literally have no one that believes in anything you say anymore.
Mm,
Um, I think that some people like you either figure out how to manage or talk to people in like a way that they feel respected, or you just burn bridge after bridge after bridge. I have known plenty of guys that have gone from just sales jobs, and they're good at sales, but they
right.
go from sales to sales to sales to sales, and it doesn't matter where they're at. They make money, but it's like the same thing. They just can't. They haven't figured it out yet, which is unfortunate. So,
Yeah. So how that formed you, that
mhm.
experience and how you move through the world today. I of course have things I see, but I don't want my perspective. I want yours. What do you see in yourself as how that's formed you?
I would say like the biggest thing that I always make sure I do with every single person is I make sure that like they are, whether or not it's a client or it's another business I'm trying to partner with or a corporation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like my goal is to make sure that they, um, whatever my goal, so my goals aren't theirs. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I
Yep.
should say it like, and I'm not going to be like, we're going to do this. Like I'm following what they want to go after. Whether or not it's like they want to, do a bodybuilding competition or they want to eat right or whatever. So like I can kind of formulate my client's culture based around what I do. And my goal is to make sure that everyone has an opinion and can be heard, and then I follow up every single time on anything they ever ask. Because that's one of the things that I had such a hard time with in sales or in any job that I ever was with, including that last gym that I worked at. It was they would either come out with an initiative and do something cool, and then never talk about it again or never follow up on the progress of it. So it'd be like if I built a program for a client, like, I'm going to add 20 pounds to my bench press. Cool. Here's a program for you. And I never checked in with them. Like, what separates that from me or something that you guys can go and print out from the internet, you know?
Yeah, nothing.
So
really.
it's about like,
Yeah,
that's right. So it's like my clients understand my why and why we're doing certain things. I'm
Yep.
very frank with them as far as like why we're doing these exercises. And I'll tell them, hey, if something doesn't make sense to you, reach out to me and I'll explain the benefit on a physiological level
Yeah.
or a neurological level of why you need to do this so that it makes sense to you. I'm not just slapping things on a piece of paper here and saying go work out. Like, everything has a process and phases and all this other stuff that we work through. And then when I lay something out, I always follow up, like, have to. That's one of the things, like I said, that as myself, I can tell you as a leader in my early 20s, like, I'd come up with great ideas and they would just kind of, they'd be great, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the follow up is a big thing for me. And I want to make sure every person has a voice, and they can, just because I'm their coach doesn't mean I can't be approachable, and I cannot be humbled either. Like, challenge me on things, even if I don't respond to you. I tell people all the time, like, stay on me around this time of year. Like, if I don't get back to you right away, it's busy, it's January. I don't care if I'm your coach, like, hold me accountable for that too. So it makes their time and their investment in themselves like really seem like it's super important to me, which it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the biggest thing is, like, I can't tell you how many people I lost buy-in to, like managers or leaders or even coworkers. Like, the moment they come up with something and they do not follow through, my brain's like, nope,
You're gone.
you don't care. Yep.
Yeah, you checked
So I've
out.
tried to really
Checked out. Yep.
make that part of my culture. It's part of my business plan. It's part of like everything that people know my expectations, and I commit to certain expectations with my clients too, and I always follow through on them, like, without doubt. I don't care if I'm sending an email at 2 a.m. I'm like, oh God, I forgot to do it. I'll wake up and I'll do it just to make sure that it's done. So
yeah. They
but
do
yeah,
say
I'd say
things that sets small business owners apart is if we do what we say we're going to do, we'll stand out far above the rest. And there is so much truth in that, to just the power of consistency and follow through.
I understand. So like 100% I'm with you on that. Like, I had a conversation with my strength class today. And a few months ago, I had to talk to them about showing up early and make sure you're on time and don't leave early, respect people's space. And I said 3 months, 4 months later, I said, hey, I wanted to make sure you guys know that I've seen that all of you guys are on time. I want to make sure that I want you to know that I really appreciate that. There's two things with me as a human being that you will always earn my respect. Is if, number one, you work hard. I don't care if you're walking the dogs or if you're making dinner or whatever, or working out, like, you work hard and you care about what you're doing. And then the other thing too is if you respect other people's time. So like, you work hard, you show good work ethic, and you show respect to other people's time as well as their effort. Like, those things will always resonate with me. And to me, the biggest thing is, like, if you don't follow up on something that you made a goal with someone, it's tough to really take any kind of like confidence in that human being to make sure that the next step is going to be okay. So anyway.
Oh, I love that. Oh, this has been such a great conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you for making time today. And those are just, such a valuable lesson of making sure that we listen, that we follow through, and that if our values are out of alignment, like, get clarity from the person that you're trying to get buy-in with. And if you're in the seat where someone's trying to get buy-in, give them the time and answer the questions, like both sides of the equation. So
yeah. I will say that, and this is one more thing really quick into like mistakes of the leader. I did not, when I was younger, I did not set boundaries very well.
Oh, okay. We will make time for this because this is an important point. Talk about what that means to you.
So now it's like, and I still have a hard time with it. It's still a work in progress because I always work. So boundaries are something that are not a bad thing. I think they're actually really good. It shows that you, number one, you have like gumption and you can't be walked on. And anything that if you're a leader, like, you can't have this like lead with an iron fist type of thing. You just have to have like this confidence that you stay steady with, and no matter what, you don't waver from. So for me, being better with boundaries has been a challenge, and it's always been a challenge because I like to make sure people are taken care of.
Yeah.
But now, like with the True Coach app,
Yeah.
if my clients have a workout related question, they message me through the app, and the whole thing is I will get back to you within 24 hours.
Yep.
If it's an emergency, text me.
Yep.
But before, if I was like, 10:15 at night, someone's working second shift, they get off and it's, 12:30, I see them answer the phone. I'm like on the phone, like trying to help them out. I'm like, manage it the best you can. I'll make sure I take care of it the next time, setting boundaries. When I was younger as a personal trainer, I just trusted everyone that they were going to basically, have the moral compass that I had. And I learned very quickly that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So every single person I treat the same with my onboarding system. So onboarding to me, I was in hiring for a little while when I worked for a sales company, and I learned a lot about equal opportunity equal opportunity employer or whatever. I can't remember the EEOA, I think it is.
Yeah.
And every single person, the way I onboard them, I do it exactly the same. So no one's treated differently. No one has preferential treatment or anything like that. So equality is important.
Yeah.
But the boundaries aspect of that is when I send them their packet, and if they want to start training with me, I'm like, all right, we're going to train in 7 days. And they're like, well, what about tomorrow? I'm like, I have to put something together for you that is exactly how you want. And that's just the way things work. So everyone has the same onboarding process. Everyone has the same time frame for when they start up everything. And when I was younger, like I said, I wish I would have had some better boundaries with that stuff. I think I would have alleviated a lot of like back end things, like biting off more than I can chew, and then not being able to follow up. Yeah.
Promises you can't keep, or promises that to keep them, you're going to keep them, but it's going to kill you. Like something's going to give on the other side. You're not going to get enough sleep, or
something's going to fall through the cracks. Yeah.
Something else. A relationship's going to suffer in your personal life.
For sure.
Yeah. I think we've all had those things happen, unfortunately. What do you,
definitely, yeah.
when you say that the setting of the boundaries and being really consistent with everybody up front, definitely important for your own, for them, for equal opportunity, but like equally important for your own sustainability and the long game, right? Because you're running a marathon with your business, not a sprint. So it's I think that's thank you for sharing that. I think that's such a great reminder.
I'm not a very like admin process driven type of human. In fact, like if I ever get to the point where I can hire someone that'll be to do that. But I will say this, every single person, like every session's tracked. Every single like invoice is tracked. I have a digital waiver that I have every single person sign. Just because they're a buddy of mine, like I've had guys that are, friends of mine for 15 years. I'm not going to be like, yeah, man, dude, I'll put a program in for you. No, like you follow the rules like everyone else. And in the past, like old Nate would have been like, hey, just, man, throw me some cash and I'll make it work out for you. But it's like, no, this is important. I'm a professional. This is my business. Again, I can control the culture. And I don't think I've said that a million times. That's one thing that's always stood out to me is like in places that I've worked before, specifically in fitness, it's like I just would shake my head at what gyms were doing and the onus they put on certain things versus like the client.
Yeah.
I worked at a gym before that they were telling people to lose 20 pounds in 30 days. And then the first thing they told the person not to do is, oh, you don't want to work out for the first 2 weeks. I'm like, we're in a gym. You're telling someone not to work out. What's going on here? So again,
know what their approach was. I think I know.
It's awful. Yeah, literally horrible. But yeah, control the culture, and everything I do is balanced. I look at every single result from every client, not just one, as like a 7 to 10 day like span.
Yeah.
So everything I do is not just only sustainable for myself, but like for the people that are trying to do what I do and live like the kind of life that I'm proud of.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sustainability professional coach. If people want to find you and reach out, are you taking more clients right now?
Always.
Okay. And how do they find you? How do they, or maybe they just want to check you out. Where should they go?
So you can go on Instagram. You can either go on my personal profile, which is at Nate Skop, or you can go on my business profile, which is at fuel_inspired.
Okay.
There's a link tree at the top of both of my profiles that if people are interested in training or they're interested in checking out my website, which I built, by the way, with zero website experience, which needs a little work, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
But like, and then there's another one for like a company that I work with in regards to like supplements and things like that. I don't do any pyramid scheme things. Don't worry. I'm not going to try to sell any snake oil, or I'm not a biohacker.
You're going to say, hey, I trust this brand. They're good. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I will only back anything that, again, kind of like my own personal moral code, like anything I ever do with any client, like prove it to me. Like I will only do supplements that are tested. I will only do things that are pretty much for the most part, like if you look at a label, like 80% of the ingredients, you understand what they are.
Right.
But like, again, it's everything that I do in my life. I'm very simple. It's like clients got to prove it to me. Food's got to prove it to me. My dogs don't, though. They run my life. So it's a little bit different with those little guys.
You got to have a soft spot somewhere.
We got a little one, little tiny one.
Well, thank you so much. We will put all of your links in the show notes so people can easily find you. Thank you so much for making time for us today, and it was a great conversation. I enjoyed getting. I was
looking forward to it. Yeah. No, honestly, I like every time we've connected and chatted. It's always been a good conversation. And, you know, you're good to my sister too, so I appreciate that. So, you know, whatever you need.
Everyone, if you have not picked up on that, Mary Skop, our producer and director of all things amazing over at the Transcend Leadership Collective. She's we're mutual admiration society for Mary. So I think Nate.
Not hard to do. Yeah, she's got better hair than me, but not by much. So it is what it is.
Mary might catch you soon. She's on your heels.
She's up there. Yeah, it's looking pretty. She's got a nice flow.
Yeah, the flow's happening. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And until next time, go manage like a leader.
Thanks for being part of this community of revolutionary leaders who believe honest communication, healthy conflict, and building cultures of acceptance, respect, and trust are not only possible, but non-negotiable for cultivating world-class teams. If one-to-one coaching, engaging workshops, or strategic planning that is actually useful are anything that interests you, make sure to head over to www.transcendleadershipcollective.com to check out our free resources. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is hosted by Layci Nelson and produced by Mary Skop. Music is by Leif Olson and Mary Skop from the band The Number of Months. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, go manage like a leader.